And I'm going to lead with a quote from someone you may have heard of, one of the original data scientists or industrial engineers, W. Edwards Deming. He's the guy who expressed the view that if you can't describe what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing. In this case, I've highlighted another one of his incisive comments, which is, well, without data, you're really just another person with an opinion. Now, this is extremely valid in terms of you need to work with empirical data. You need to have information that enables you to distance an opinion to across your own personal views or team collective knowledge with actually the hard data of what's really happening in the here and now, not what happened with the previous release or the one before that or 5 years ago. And tying in with that is very much the sense that not all your releases are equal. Not all deserve or merit the same time and dedication and resources that you allocate to those, because their impact could be very, very different. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But another key aspect related to this is the importance of having some form of third-party validation. If you're building a house, for example, it's better to have an independent building standards authority or body reviewing how that building is constructed, rather than one of your friends saying, "Oh, it looks all right. The windows look like they're being well installed, or it looks warm." That's very, very subjective. You need that independent, hard criteria. But equally, this is someone I've worked with on and off in previous years, Steve Chambers. He's challenged that thinking by saying, well, with data, you are still just a person with an opinion. And he's kind of right that you can't just use data alone to force through your perspective. Ideally, what you need is a combination of data, the overall kind of wider context in which you're working, and then team insights built up over time, which absolutely still have a value. So that's just set the scene, but I'd now like to move to Rishab to bring to life how Active Discover can support this.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. And I'll take it one step further. So data is critical, but the real-time data is really where it's at. And absolutely well said in terms of it's a combination of your team's judgment and experience combined with that real-time data, right? So we've spoken a lot about data, but the user experience of any kind of tooling that you use has a big role to play in how you identify risks early. We all saw in the poll that identifying things early was of importance, right? So looking at the screen here, the ability to run an analysis, and we're all familiar with the SAP world, right? But the ability to analyze a range of items, starting from business change itself to S-notes support packs to larger upgrades, and more importantly, the ability to do that in a hypothetical manner, in a what-if scenario, even before the change has been developed, right? There's no excuse for modern technology to not enable that. I'd like our audience to visualize this screen really as a funnel, because one of the top or the first thing that you'd see here is the totality of impact of a particular change, in this case, an SAP support pack, right? But is that enough information? Do you need to scratch the surface a little more to really get to the meat of what are some of those actionable steps that my technical team can take? One thing I want to draw everyone's attention to on this screen is a part of the user experience is the ability to bring in or loop in the business community as well, to really get their input in terms of analyzing the change early on. So I talked about the totality of change. If you look one step further, now we start getting into the specifics of what specific is the top level impact of this particular change. This dashboard here will enable change teams to identify the high, medium, and low areas of impact, and use those as a navigation tool to then dive deeper into the specific areas that need to be actioned. Right? So for instance, you can see there's no impact to security roles here, but there's certainly an impact to active users and external systems. Scratching that surface a little more, now we get to see a more visual form of the data. We get to see more numbers. And one of the key takeaways of this slide, if any, for everyone on the call is this is real time. So this is based on a true and current representation of your SAP landscape that might be evolving due to, as Justin said, the high number of innovation in various forms coming from the business or from the vendor itself, SAP. So right here, if I can draw your attention to the left, automation can be leveraged to automatically identify the most impacted objects. So certainly on the left, you can see there's a couple of objects that are screaming for attention there in red. Likewise, on the right-hand side, I can see there's a sizable impact to your active users, and this is based on usage data that's common in SAP systems. But I also see that there's no impact to SAP security roles. Now, security is a top topic and a huge topic for us in supporting our customers here at Basis as well. But in this particular run, there's no impact on security roles. So the question I'd ask is this sufficient data yet for your team to analyze further? Probably not. So let's take another deeper look at what the specific drivers are of that particular impact, right? Not all drivers are equal. And the point of this slide is really for now the more technical audiences to identify, okay, I have a couple of critical objects. Critical objects are configurable based on what's critical to your business and your process. And in addition to that, this whole idea of using dependency maps, the ability for software to automate and provide a visual, as you can see in the bottom left here, of the source change and the pathway that that change is taken to arrive at the top level impacted objects. There's a lot of information that can be gleaned from this. So as a developer, if I wear my development hat, I can validate if you have a very highly entangled SAP system, I can validate that it's indeed touching the right top level objects that I intended to. If you traverse the list behind you, the developer can also understand what are the other sister transactions or programs that are impacted. Is there a third-party object that's impacted? Is there an object impacted that's critical, like I mentioned, to where a senior security architect needs to review? Looking at the dependency map itself, has the developer accounted for all the dependencies within their estimate? And it's not only about the developer, right? It's about the broader change and the change team. So is this change really, in terms of magnitude, what the developer expected in the first place? So that's some of the ways that the technical team can look at dependency maps and data and use that to their advantage. Now, there's a couple of other items here as drivers of the impact. Usage stands out here. Usage is simply who's using the transactions and in what capacity, and in what capacity in terms of how frequently they're using the change. And we'll look into that a little deeper as well. But one thing also to remember from a user experience standpoint is we want to avoid our customers having analysis paralysis, and therefore working off a single score to then enable both business and IT teams to prioritize based on that single score is also quite important. So in the next section, we'll look a little deeper into the usage aspect of the change.